Your man, Louie T. Welcome to the command post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your commander-in-chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, we're talking free agency targets for the Commanders. We're talking about the linebacker position, which is one that has troubled us for quite some time. Now, I want to make sure I make this abundantly clear at the top of this video. Free agency is a very fluid process. And so at the time of this video, every player that I'm going to address and talk about, we're heading towards free agency, which starts on Wednesday. Now, with that said, they can still negotiate with their current teams, and they could sign a deal to stay with that team prior to free agency getting underway, and thus that player would not be available. But again, I don't know when you're watching this video, but at the time of the recording, all of these players were available still and look like guys that would be a part of the free agency crop at the linebacker position. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's talk about the linebacker position, because I think it's made a strong comeback here over the last 3 or 4 years. I think you're seeing teams put more of a emphasis on getting quality linebacker play, whereas it felt like it was somewhat of a throwaway position. It was almost an afterthought of sorts. But with teams like San Francisco and the Kansas City Chiefs playing in the Super Bowl and getting the kind of play they got out of the linebacker position, it continues to highlight the importance of the linebacker position in particular and how that can change your fortunes. We look at the Baltimore Ravens, another team that made it to the AFC Championship game, and how well their linebackers played this year. And again, with the changing landscape of NFL offenses and how they look to create mismatches, your linebackers have to be very athletic, smart, instinctual, all of those things. And so I think the linebacker position is becoming what it once was, which was a prized position where you need great players in order to thrive on the defensive side of the football. So with that said, we've been a linebacker deprived and starved team for almost a decade, it feels like. I mean, you got to go back to London Fletcher in terms of having a guy that we just absolutely trusted as a big-time playmaker at the linebacker position for us. We really haven't had a guy since. So that's something that they're going to have to fix. And the thing that you should feel good about, at least I do, I can't speak for you, is our GM is coming from San Francisco, and he helped kind of construct that defense, specifically those linebackers who they did not get in the first round. And they're two of the better linebackers in all of football. So you feel like you hope he can do something like that here. Lance Newmark, who we brought over to be our assistant GM from Detroit, was a part of the brain trust that drafted Jack Campbell in the first round in Detroit. So they put emphasis on addressing the linebacker position there. Maybe we'll get some love at the linebacker position finally after years of negligence by the Washington Commanders. So let's take a look at some of the free agents that I think they should go after with aggression. And then we'll also take a look at some guys that I think the team might be interested in. So some other names to watch. So as you take a look at my free agents that I would target, and I'll just say that if it's highlighted in black, I would pursue them very aggressively. These are the guys that I want the most. At this particular position, the guys that you're going to see, I want all of them. And I'll be happy, I'll be elated, I'll be ecstatic if we get any of them. But I'll tell you the order in which, and you'll see them in the order in which I want them. And I start with Blake Cashman, the Houston Texans linebacker. He'll be 28 in May. He's coming off of the best season of his career. He started out as a member of the New York Jets, coming out of the University of Minnesota. Athletic guy, ran a 4.5 40. I remember him coming out of college being very impressed with his tape. The Jets took him, couldn't get on the field in New York, got traded to Houston, and had his best season of his career under DeMeco Ryans this past year, was a difference maker for the Texans. And I'm shocked that he's even here. I thought they would bring him back just off the strength of watching this guy blossom and having given up draft capital to get him in the first place. I didn't think they'd let him walk, but here we are. Again, it's a fluid situation. Anything could happen. He could agree to terms with the Texans prior to free agency getting underway, and I wouldn't be shocked if it happened. But Should it not take place, he's a guy that I'm looking at and saying, hey, that's a damn good football player. He's fast, he's instinctual, he's physical. He makes plays on the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. And to me, he looks like he fits a Dan Quinn, Joe Witt Jr. type of defender. And this is the position in particular where I start thinking about them saying fast, physical, flying to the football. This defense isn't going to be for everybody. We're going to be violent. This is the position you're thinking about right here. Right? Cashman is one of those types of guys. Bobby Wagner, B-Wags, future Hall of Famer, Bobby Wagner, is going to be 34, I believe, in June. So he's a seasoned veteran, very seasoned. But in saying that, he came off of a career high in tackles last year. So he's still playing at a very high level. I imagine that if you sign Bobby Wagner, which I've talked about this, it'll be a one-year deal. He's not signing anywhere for 2 or 3 years, and no one's signing him for 2 or 3 years. He's on a year-to-year basis type of situation now as he gets into the final stages of his career, but he's still playing at a very high level. I don't think a team like Washington would interest Bobby Wagner, but here's my angle. He knows Dan Quinn very intimately, and Dan Quinn knows Bobby Wagner very intimately, as Quinn was the defensive coordinator when Wagner really came into prominence as a part of the Legion of Boom. Quinn was the guy that really helped mold him into the player that he's become. And maybe he'd pay it forward by giving Quinn a bit of a boost as he looks to build his program here in Washington by coming in and helping him that first year get it off the ground. That's all I can hope for, right? That Bobby Wagner is viewed by a lot of teams around the league as past his prime. They're watching the tape. They know he's still, Bobby Wagner. They know he's not the guy that he once was in coverage, but as far as an instinctual, triggering downhill linebacker, that's a force, that's a tackling machine, he's still that guy. And so I'd love to add him. I wouldn't think twice about it. I'd add Bobby Wagner in a heartbeat. Don't know if they feel the same way, but he'd be a guy that I would be definitely interested in. That's to say the least. Frankie Louvu, to me, is one of those guys that when I think about what they've described this defense, the identity of what they want this defense to be, fast, physical, violent, I think of Frankie Louvu. He's the description in my mind. When you say those things, I think about a guy playing with his hair on fire, a guy running around the field with reckless abandon. Controlled aggression is what I like to call it. Controlled chaos. That's Frankie Louvu. He plays like there's no tomorrow. I don't know if there's going to be another snap, so I'm going to give you everything I got on this snap. That's the kind of guy that we've been missing in Washington. That's Frankie Louvu. That's why I want him so bad here in Washington. And if they're smart, they'll want Frankie Louvu too. And I'll take it a step further. Dan Quinn has talked about wanting linebackers that can get after the quarterback. Well, Frankie Louvu is one of the best in the league at getting to the quarterback. 5.5 sacks this year, 7.5 sacks the year prior. So you're talking about a guy that is getting to the quarterback. Sign me up for some Frankie Louvu. Please and thank you. And then lastly, Devin White. And I've got questions about Devin White. And I'm almost to the point where just give me Frankie Louvu and I'm good. Not going to cost as much. Not going to have to fight people over a former first-round pick, former top 5 pick in Devin White. But boy, Devin White, when he triggers, man, when he fires his gun, when he sees it and he goes, no one else in the league looks quite like Devin White when he decides he feels like playing football. That's the problem, though, is anytime you've got a guy where there's been questions about effort and motor, I struggle with that. And clearly this staff struggles with that too. He's a guy you got to vet. If you're going to sign him, you got to know that you're all, and look, you can't come here if you're not all in. I might just say, you know what? Just give me Frankie Louvu. I don't need to have a guy that I got question marks with, but boy, the talent with Devin White, it's undeniable and it's hard to overlook. And if you can somehow get him to play at a high level and get him bought in, right? He's a one of a kind guy. He's a unicorn type linebacker in this league. He's got that potential. I'm invested, man. I'm interested. I'm intrigued. Any of these dudes, and I'm feeling damn good about the acquisition that we just made. Any of them. As you can see, they're all in black. Any of them. I feel great. Here's some guys that I think they may consider. Azeez Al-Shire. I just think you can do better than Azeez Al-Shire. But again, he signed a 1-year deal last year to go play for the Titans for Rand Carthen, who was a former personnel front office man in San Francisco. Maybe he'll sign another 1-year deal to come play for another former San Francisco front office personnel guy in Adam Peters here in Washington. I'd be interested. Not turning it down. Devin White, just for age purposes. Devin White, 26. Okay, just turned 26 in February. Frankie Louvu is going to turn 28 in September. And Azeez Al-Shire is going to turn 27 in August. So those are the numbers in terms of age. I'm not concerned about anybody's age. Even Bobby Wagner's on this list because you only sign him to a 1-year deal anyway if you sign Bobby Wagner. So I'm not tripping about anybody's age on this list. And then I just think Azeez Al-Shire, he's a quality linebacker. If we sign him, I wouldn't be upset. But I just think you can do better. We can do better. Speaking of doing better, Oren Burks is another guy to consider. And I think most people, and I can't speak for you guys, I'll just speak for myself. I just assumed that Jeremy Reaves would be back. Why not? He's a core special teamer, one of the best. He was an all-pro a couple seasons ago. He made the Pro Bowl. We know his story, and we know what we can count on from Jeremy Reaves. Like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So we just assumed he'd be back, but he doesn't have to be back. And if you're not going to bring him back, then you better replace him. I always talk about needing fiends on special teams. You better have at least 2 fiends. If you want to make sure there are no special teams breakdowns, you need 2.5 fiends on special teams. Oren Burks is a fiend. So if you're gonna move on, Jeremy Reaves is a fiend and a half. So it's hard to replace those kind of guys. But if you're gonna replace him, Oren Burks fits that description. Not to a T, but he's close enough. He's as close as you're gonna get in terms of a special teams dynamo, and also offers you, some ability to play the linebacker position in a pinch, which is what he was doing in San Francisco. So he kills 2 birds with 1 stone. And again, he's got ties to San Francisco, which links him to our general manager, Adam Peters. Oren Burks turns 29 in March. So just another name to keep an eye on. Both of these guys that are going to be considered that you should keep an eye on, ex-San Francisco 49ers, with roots traced back to our general manager, Adam Peters. So that's what I see at the linebacker position. I feel really good. I feel like we're going to come away with something noteworthy. I'll be disappointed if we don't, to be honest with you. Last year, there were really good linebackers, and we got nothing. We walked away with Cody Barton. This year's crop isn't as good as last year's, but it's just a notch below. And we got to walk away with something. I feel like Denzel in this particular look, man. This year, we need to leave with something. All right? I'm leaving with something. Give me something. One of those guys that I talked about on my target list would have me over the moon. All right? What says you? Leave it down in the comment section. What do you think is a good target for Washington at the linebacker position? Any of the guys I named, or is it someone that I left off? Leave it down in the comment section. Can't wait to read your responses. But that's going to do it for me, your man Louie T, here on the Command Post. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care. See you next time.
LouieTeeNetwork.